Welcome back to Overhead Athletics. Today we're going to talk about a few different ways that you can work on supination of the forearm at home. So if we're going to improve supination, we have to understand that the anterior joint capsule can limit supination. We can also have a pronator teres contracture where it comes across, limits supination range of motion. Sometimes we have splinting of the joint, immobilization after surgery that limits our range of motion, makes things more fibrous. But a lot of times what we see is that there's inflammation in the surrounding tissues, or we have muscle guarding, those sorts of things surrounding the joint, because the radiocapitular joint is a primary restraint against valgus stress. So we think of the UCL as the primary valgus stress restraint, but what actually happens is we have compression on the lateral side, and that's our primary restraint to valgus stress, typically in throwers, and then the UCL works in conjunction with that to limit gapping on the inside of the elbow. So we have tension on the inside, compression on the outside, and what we see is degeneration of this joint from time to time. And we've done a video on this, Panner's disease, and basically what happens is we get an osteochondritis dissecans, which basically means that we have cartilaginous tissue peeling away from the bone, breaking away, and we end up having bone on bone, and it's rather uncomfortable. We can have pain in these guys, we can have limited range of motion as a result of the change in the joint, as well as inflammation that limits range of motion, guarding, muscle guarding that limits range of motion. But what we found is, hey, if we can start to position the arm better in the throw, we'll have better success with it. And then what we can do is we can begin to mobilize the elbow and try to offload the joint somewhat. So this is actually a posterior glide of the elbow complex. It kind of pulls the ulna off the humerus a little bit, but it also glides the radius posteriorly, and then I can take it into flexion here beyond 90 degrees. It doesn't move a lot at 90, and I can begin to grab on the radial side, heel of the palm on the ulnar side. So heel of the palm here, fingers grab around the radius bone, and I begin to just do some oscillations where I'm just pulsating at the end range, or I can hold. Generally the pulsation feels a little bit better. I'm always making sure to protect this part of the wrist, the TFCC, whether that's a little bit of extension and ulnar deviation, deviating this way, or flexion and ulnar deviation, finding what's comfortable. But I start here, I can do it here. If I have some real deficits, I can grab there and kind of push the other way, getting it as close to the joint line as possible, and just feeling what I feel. If it feels like I can get more and it feels really bouncy, I can actually get some stretching, get a pole, get a bat, come in on something, start facing it, holding, and then I turn my body. I'm going to externally rotate my shoulder, but I'm also going to end range supinate my forearm here. And I just do a sustained stretch. So I have that, and I can hang out in that. A lot of times people don't hang out and stretch long enough to make a permanent or plastic change. So I'll tell athletes, hang out in a supinated position, whether that's here, and just letting the bat fall to the right, whether that I'm in extension, slight flexion, whatever I can do at the time, letting it fall to the outside. So in this case here, just letting it fall to the outside, whatever I can tolerate. Maybe 2 minutes I'm accumulating in that stretch every day. And then I can actually do the same when I do for elbow extension. Come up onto the humerus. I'm pulling the arm, the upper arm forward. I come here, and now I actually rotate my body, so I'm maxing out my supination while I do it. So I'm just trying to mobilize the joint in multiple directions, but often what we find most beneficial is a traction mobilization. So I get in full elbow extension, I grab right behind my knee, pinch this knee down to hold my fingers, I grab here on my wrist, and then I'm in supination and I'm just pulling down towards the ground. So I'm here pulling down and I'm just pulsating, and now I can do a prolonged hold. I'm not going to get a ton of capsular stretching here, but what I'm going to get is some refreshment of the nourishing or the synovial fluid in that area, which we know carries the nutrients to the joint tissue. So if I have pain, I've offloaded the joint surface, I've began to refresh and provide some nourishment back in that area. It often feels really good. Now if it doesn't, I have to consider, okay, now let's try to mobilize in an anterior direction and see if we can increase some mobility and maybe decrease the pain a little bit. So I have a few options. If I'm sitting on a bench here, I can grab the bench this way, grab behind, and I feel this joint line right there. Now I grab a little bit below the joint line with my fingers in this grip, and now I can sit here and I can pull forward, and what I'll feel is that this radius bone moves forward relative to this humerus bone. So I'm here. I can even do this between my legs. This is an easy way to do it. I got to make sure that I'm not pulling the bone this way towards me, but rather I'm pulling it forward. And if you feel like, oh man, that hurts kind of, it's very likely I'm compressing the joint or I'm jamming it past the range of motion that's good for it. So I'm just gonna sit there and hold. I'm in supination, so I've turned my hand this way. I'm not grabbing the bench. I'm resting my hand against there, or the distal forearm against the edge of the bench, and I'm just pulling forward. And you should actually feel a decent stretch kind of inside here, deep right in there, and then maybe even a little bit in the back as you do this. And if I want to increase my supination, I turn my body this way and do the same thing. But once again, if I turn this way and I'm pulling here, I'm probably compressing the joint a little bit between the radius and the ulna. So I want to make sure that at first I've provided a proper angle to do the mobilization. So there you go. You have a stretch, hold here, rotate, stretch the muscle. If I don't feel a stretch, I'm probably not dealing with a muscular related issue. If I do my glide this way, I feel like I can do it. I do it in different degrees of flexion and extension. If that's not improving it, then I'm going to move more towards a pain management procedure of oscillatory traction. Ultimately, I think the best self-mobilization is to grab this, grab your leg, and then pull in a forward direction towards you guys, in fact, right here at the camera, with this opposite hand right below. So if you look here, here's the joint line. There's the lateral epicondyle. There's the joint line. So I go one bump, two bumps just below it. That's where I'm going to grab, and I'm going to perform this mobilization. Hey, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. If you hit the like, that tells us that you like this video, and we're happy to make more content like this in the future. If you subscribe, you won't miss our next video. Stay tuned.